Where do I go? What freaks me out is there's about a half-second delay
Yeah, I know.
from what I'm doing
Yeah.
versus what they show on that
Yeah.
screen.
Sometimes we do remotes where we remote people in. Like I could remote you in from Connecticut.
Yeah.
And there's a delay too, and you have to be in your ear. There's a delay. So Jane said, "What's this delay stuff?" She was busting my horns. In fact, she had to deal with that at the network all the time.
Yeah.
She would just pull the earphone out so that unless she wanted to hear what they were saying and she wasn't talking.
Right.
But if they're talking and you're trying to talk, it's very annoying.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed about like sportscasters, we did a tour of that museum in Astoria. You ever go to that?
The Museum of the Moving Image?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. It's great.
And what's fascinating is there's a room where they show a sports broadcast. I don't know if it's still around today, but 10, 20 years ago, they show a sports broadcast.
Yeah.
And you realize all the different cameras
Yeah.
and the things that they,
A lot going on.
yeah.
Real lot
They're
going on.
getting, camera 6. So this guy,
Yeah. Well, they have a whole control room
Yeah.
with people yapping at the same time.
yeah.
It's pretty cool. So, Frank, we're on, right?
Yes.
How are you, Frank?
I'm good.
Mike Innamorato, Mike the recruiting guy.
Hello, yes, that's me.
We have Mike the recruiter on tonight.
Yeah.
Lori Kay couldn't make it.
I think
She's busy beaching it on Fire Island.
Wow. I think this is the second show that you.
This is the second time you've been on.
That's like a streak.
I thought you were a good fit. I mean, you're not as good looking as Lori Kay.
So you're not the regular here?
No.
Not
You're
what-
a,
Lori Kay is a regular.
oh, okay.
And she's on the beach,
Okay.
tanning it up. So she couldn't make it tonight. I told her it was you. It was a real struggle for her to decide. Fire
I go to
Island,
the
Mike.
beach myself.
Yeah. Fire Island,
If I
Mike
were she,
Critelli.
I'd take the beach.
She didn't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike, how are you looking at the show? Are you looking? You're not looking at the show. Frank, you're going to have to get him on my laptop when you get a
I
chance.
think that's the camera right there. If I'm not.
No, but you have to be able to look at comments coming in.
Oh,
I forgot to give you a laptop.
okay. So
Take
laptop-
that laptop.
Okay.
I'd leave the set, but that might look a little awkward. Should I leave the set? Here, let me leave the set just for a second. I'm going to come back. I'm going to get you set up. I have to leave this on, Mike. Don't let that come off, because then...
I was listening to it's the 30th anniversary of the movie Major League.
Nice.
And I was listening to MLB Network on Sirius XM Radio, and they were interviewing the director, and he was talking about some of the problems. They didn't have a big budget. They were shooting a scene in a high school locker room during the summer when it was 90 degrees out, and they had all these they're heat generating cameras and lights, and they only had 2 uniforms for each performer, and they had to keep changing these guys because they were doing multiple takes.
You're getting all sweaty.
Really?
And you realize how, and at one point they said in order to get these things dry fast, they were using like a leaf blower to dry the sweat off these uniforms because they were trying to shoot a scene from before a game started.
Yeah.
And then the uniforms got even hotter. So they said it was a miserable experience, but they were talking about some of the behind the scenes challenges. We had the opposite challenge with my movie. We had a scene that was set in the rain, and we had 14 shooting days in New Orleans, and we said, oh, October, New Orleans, we're going to have 4 or 5 days with which to work where we can shoot a scene in the rain. There was no rain. We got to the 14th day, and my son and the assistant director, my son was an assistant producer, the director came up with a great idea. They had this coach who was supposed to be a hard driving coach. They gave her a garden hose, and then she simulated rain by just, you see the scene where the golfer is trying to hit a shot in the rain, and it's like he's being drenched, and then the camera pulls back and you realize she's just drenching him with a garden hose. because she wants to teach him how to hit
In the rain.
shots in bad weather.
Wow.
So, but that was, you had to improvise
Right.
because,
It's a really good movie.
yeah, you had to improvise.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Who was the main star in that movie? What's her name?
Taraji P. Henson, you know,
You know who
she
she
was
is?
in Hidden Figures. You ever see Hidden Figures?
She's pretty famous.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was the lead in Empire, the TV show
Oh,
Empire.
okay,
And we got her before she was famous with white people.
She was in another TV show that took place in New York
Person
about
of
AI.
Interest.
Yeah, about AI, right?
Yeah, Person of Interest.
Person of Interest. That was a
Yeah.
good show.
That was right about the time we were trying, she was finishing up on Person of Interest and in 2014. And we were trying to get her on all these talk shows for our movie. And the problem we had was they wouldn't have her go on. They were interviewing her about, you know, how did she feel about her character of getting knocked off
Are you
in
locked
Person
in
of
New York?
Interest. And they wouldn't let us have her a month later for the movie.
Right.
And then we had the opposite problem. She had another movie coming out during the summer. We were shooting we were getting these slots for the month of April. And we were knocked out of a lot of opportunities because of Person of Interest on the front end and her summer movie after that.
Oh, wow.
I need this. My laptop is running so slow. I
It
don't
would
know
have
what's wrong.
been a great artificial intelligence
See,
tool to
Sure.
figure out when best to put this movie out, because we ended up not picking a particularly good time. But we didn't know that at the time.
So let's see. How did you get involved in that movie?
How did I get involved? I created it.
You had a friend who knew the.
No. Here's what
It's
happened.
a true story.
Yeah, no, my younger son I'm going to really make this much shorter story. My
Has to
younger
be, 'cause
son
we're on
had a
live
really
stream.
inspiring, flaky looking white Swedish chess coach. And he turned my younger son into a national champion and one of the best players in the country in high school. And when he won his second national championship, I said, I don't know anything about you. I said, the Swedish guy. And he very matter-of-factly said, well, my brother and I got golf scholarships to Tennessee State University. And I said, that's a historically black college. He said, yeah, we were one of the first white people to go to this college. I said, well, how did you find us? Oh, we didn't find the school. This woman found us. I said, you mean somebody in admissions or financial aid or administration? No, the men's golf coach was a black woman. So, not surprisingly, I just thought this make a great movie. A black woman recruiting white males from around the world for a historically black college. Have you ever seen the movie Glory Road?
I haven't. No.
Okay, Glory Road was about the first all-black NCAA champion. Came out. Glory Road was set in 1966, but the movie came out 40 years later, and it was basically about a white coach who recruited black basketball players to an all-white college.
Right.
In El Paso. It was then called Texas Western. It's now called. So all I think of, this is like Glory Road, but everything's flipped on its head.
Nice.
So I would tell anybody I knew about it, and they say, oh, they'll make a great movie story.
Right.
And my older son was working as an intern for a local independent director. And he said, let's contact the coach and go see her. And so we went down to Nashville. She was still coaching. I bought the rights to the story from her. And then it took 8 years to get it to the theater.
Wow.
We had all sorts of setbacks. And I had to fund all the production and post-production
Wow.
And then I brought in group of 4 investors for the marketing and distribution. And bottom line is they're going to make their money back
Wow, that's great.
on the marketing and distribution. In fact, they'll make a profit. I'll probably never get my production and post-production money back.
That's too bad.
Yeah, but that was a lot more than marketing and distribution. And we didn't do well in theaters because unknown to us, the woman who was running our distribution company was
Just the
dying.
background.
Wow.
So,
Sorry about that. We
Oh,
can,
you can't see it.
no. But we're just about to get ready
Did
for
you
the
have
show.
experience doing anything like this before? So it was just a great idea to let's figure this
I
out.
hired people. I'd worked with the director at the National Urban League. He did a very good job assembling the cast and the crew. He shot the movie okay, but he was a disaster as an editor. And he had his own ideas about the music and the editing. And I went with his vision. He and my son locked horns. I went with his vision, and everybody I tried to pitch the movie to gave me excuses that didn't quite feel right, but nobody liked his version. So,
How long was it in the movies for? Because other than you sending me his link, I didn't.
well, you can
Ever
find it
s-
today on
Oh,
Amazon,
you can.
iTunes, YouTube, Hulu,
Right.
DirecTV. We exited the Netflix deal at the end of 2017 because they demanded exclusivity to renew.
Okay.
And we got a much better deal from the Golf Channel and BET Networks.
So we're going to start the show, and I actually may go back into this, but we've got to start the show because it's after 5:30.
Okay.
We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. We are on our website. We do have audio. We're all good to go. The only thing I don't have, Frank, is anything in the confidence monitor.
What do you want, the two-shot?
Well, if I have to take that, but I'd rather have preview, output, and then the inputs with the photo. Well, we're not going to do the photos now because we're going right into the show. But yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. So, Frank J. Parisi, it's after 5:30. You're late, as usual. Do you know what that means, Frank?
What does it mean?
Are you on the right camera? Wrong camera. It means, is Mike okay with his, Mike, turn your head the other way. Is his head okay with the green screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Well, then you know what? Frank J. Parisi, it's time. Let's roll 'em. Welcome to Anatomy of an Entrepreneur. Good day. Today is July the 29th. It's a little after 5:30 p.m. Sometimes we have little technical difficulties, but somehow Frank J. Parisi, myself, and the rest of the crew make it work. We have never, ever let you down, no matter what. The rain, the snow. Mike, how does that go?
Yeah. It will keep you from your appointed rounds.
Yeah, something like that. Well, you were in the mail business, you know. Come on now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to take care of a couple things first. Mike Innamorato, are you looking at your phone, or are you looking at the phone on the Facebook, or are you on YouTube, or are you looking at that for
I'm
your
doing
Facebook?
a little bit of both. I'm multitasking.
Okay, so we're on Facebook. If you want to go on YouTube on your phone, that's fine, because we're on 2 platforms tonight. Actually, we're on 3. We're on our website, YouTube, and Facebook. So also, our show tonight is brought to you by My Instant Office. If you need a desk, a chair, a conference room by the day, the week, or the month, come on in, sit down, and get to work. We just say, add yourself. Mike Innamorato, do you know that to be true?
Absolutely.
Yes, you do, because you are a member of My Instant Office.
I am.
And I was desperate. I needed somebody to fill that chair.
And it's been great.
Yeah, I think you're going to do a great job.
Thank you.
And we are also brought to you by the Huntington Chamber of Commerce. Mike Critelli, did you know the Huntington Chamber of Commerce is the largest chamber of commerce on Long Island?
I am not surprised at that. I know a few people here. It's a very big organization.
It is pretty big.
Yes, yes.
And as a matter of fact, every fall they have a festival in the village of Huntington.
Yeah.
They get 250,000 people showing to that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And one time I was talking with the associate director of the Huntington Chamber of Commerce, and I said, Courtney, I need something to say about the chamber. And she said, just tell people it's the best darn chamber in the world. And that's what Courtney said. So with that aside, first of all, I would like to thank Mike the recruiter, Mike Innamorato, for coming here to help out tonight and pinch hit for the lovely Lori Kay, who is watching, but she, don't pick on Frank, she says in the comments.
Thanks, Lori.
Mike is not as good looking as Lori. I should have had a picture of Lori come up, but Mike, you'll do. Also, our talented technical director, Frank J. Parisi, is here. Unfortunately, Joe Lavolsi, Officer Joe, our lighting director and DP, is not here. He got a paying gig. But I would like to introduce our guest, who I can't really believe that he's here. 30 some odd years ago, I was a sales rep in a company called Pitney Bowes, and the only time I ever heard of Mike Rotelli was like through some company newsletter. I just thought of him as like this guy up in some ivory tower who I would never meet unless I was maybe at a sales conference. So here we are, transported 34 years later. Mike, what are you doing here?
Well, the show is about entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur for really the last 11 years since I left Pitney Bowes. I've lived my life backwards. Most people start as an entrepreneur and then move into a more steady state corporate job. I've done it in reverse.
You know, he's very quick on that answer. Touche to him. What do you think, Mike?
That's great.
Yeah.
How is it so far?
Well, I've been involved with many businesses, and frankly, I've gone through all the learning that any entrepreneur would go with. The good news about entrepreneurs is that the more you fail, the more opportunities you get.
Absolutely, because
So
you're putting yourself
I've certainly had lots of opportunities to fail.
Yeah, well, but you've done it.
Yeah.
And you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you something about Pitney Bowes. Pitney Bowes trained me not to just fail, well, what failure is like, but it trained me as far as entrepreneurialism goes. I didn't have a salary at Pitney Bowes. I worked on a commission. And if I didn't sell, I didn't eat. And so that company really gave me the opportunity to learn how to fend for myself. You know, I mean, there was help and there was resources there. I'm not going to deny that. And I had great, benefits in health care. But the fact that I took on a job like that really made me who I am, part of who I am today.
Our great salespeople were entrepreneurs, and they would come up with ideas for businesses. My favorite of all during my time as CEO was a New York sales rep who had to do what's, in those days, I think they still use the term cold call, on a restaurant, a Japanese restaurant in Manhattan that never used a postage meter. It wasn't a question of upgrading. They were using stamps. And she persuaded them, instead of having the people that did food deliveries slip these menus under people's doors in New York apartment buildings, she had them collect business cards, do direct mail, give promotions. Bottom line, within 3 years, they were buying equipment worth about $250,000. They were performing
Really?
direct marketing services, not only for 2 Japanese restaurants, but 6 other restaurants in Manhattan.
So it changed their business.
It changed their business. And she was just one story out of many. And those were the ones that were the most fun.
Can you tell me who the sales rep was?
I couldn't tell you.
Oh, okay, because I worked with a lot of those sales
Yeah.
reps.
But I'm just saying, the thing that
It's
brought
crazy.
joy to me was
Yeah.
the people that came up with very creative ideas for the business.
So that's where I'm going to go, and we've spoken about this before, is you make your own luck.
Yes.
And this person was lucky the sales rep came in, but saw an opportunity and kind of let it take them where it wanted to go, but worked it and became a success when the day before that guy came in, they probably never ever thought they would go where
Actually,
they
it
were
was
going.
a woman.
Right. She never thought she would go where she did.
Yeah.
And to me, that's amazing part of entrepreneurialism. You just don't know where you're going to end up.
No, I think one of the reasons Pitney Bowes was a very hospitable environment is I would come up with very out-of-the-box ideas even before I became CEO. And frankly, the first reaction was people saying, "No, that's an interesting idea," but they would snicker, or somebody would tell me that we couldn't do it. And I generally, if I thought it was a good idea, I didn't give up on it. And that's really the key, is you got to be really tenacious.
That's a very hard thing to do in a public corporation.
Yeah.
Because your butt is on the line to make that decision. You have to think about boards of directors and stockholders. So where did you get the gumption to do that, knowing I could be out of here tomorrow if I make this wrong decision?
As a person who had a law practice license, I knew I had a fallback.
Okay.
I was going to be able to support my family regardless. And I never looked at this as a situation where I would get thrown into poverty if something went wrong.
Why did your entrepreneurial spirit end up at the end rather than the beginning?
I don't know. I think back when I came out of school, there was a fairly well-worn path for somebody. I'd gone to Harvard Law School. It was a very well-worn path. You interviewed at certain firms. I went to 2 different firms, then I went to Pitney Bowes. I did show a little bit of entrepreneurship in 1980, and it was because my boss at the time said, "You should go to the sales training school because you're the lawyer assigned to sales and marketing in the mailing group." We all had targeted assignments. And so the very first day of sales training, the trainer said, well, here's a visualizer with the 9 benefits of the Pitney Bowes
I remember the
meter.
visualizer.
And one of them was, we saved the post office $500 a year on every single postage meter because they don't have to design, produce, distribute, sell, and account for stamps. So as a lawyer, I knew that postal rates were supposed to be dependent on cost. So I said, do we get a discount on postage meter mail? And the answer was no. And I said, well, why not? Well, nobody had ever asked the Postal Service for discounts. So I dropped the idea. 15 years later, I was the vice chairman. I said, why don't we pitch the idea of postage meter discounts? Bottom line, we started getting them outside the United States within a year. And we got them for special kinds of postal products like certified mail return receipt by about 2002. And we finally got them for ordinary mail in 2013. And when I went into my first entrepreneurial business after retirement, my wife said, if you're going to use that kind of behavior, you just have to hope the payback's before 33 years. So we need something that's going to work a little bit faster than that.
Yeah. And then I mean, you left Pitney Bowes. I mean, it wasn't like you were a kid out of college. Now you had some means.
Yeah.
Did that make it easier for you to become an entrepreneur, or no?
I was obsessed with certain things. Like, I made a movie because the story obsessed me.
And I'm going to say, while you had means, that's pretty crazy because movies are very expensive to produce.
Yes, I found that out. And there's an old expression, how do you become a millionaire making a movie? And the answer
I actually
is
know that.
Start with $1 billion.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I never put more than about, I think, 10% of my net worth at stake in this process. I basically put boundaries about how much I was prepared to spend to get it to launch.
I saw the movie.
Yeah.
I really liked it. It was a very good movie. Had a very nice storyline to it. The acting was very good, but it didn't. I'm sure you got a nice, like, critical accolades for it. Yes. But it didn't do well at the box office.
Right, because there were several things I did not know about the movie business. And probably the most important of those was that the movie business is not set up the way it was 10 or 20 years ago, where somebody tells you 6 weeks before release date, these are the theaters you're going to have, and you really target those localities with grassroots marketing. They change theaters not only from week to week, but day to day,
Right.
based upon real-time intelligence. You can't do grassroots, low-cost marketing with that kind of rapidly changing
Right.
theatrical venue. There were places where we eventually got the theaters we want 4 days before release date. Too short a time to really do the kind of marketing
Yeah.
that I thought I could do.
We have a question that came in from a Mike Doty.
Okay.
Mike, while head of the company, did you ever feel you were going to fail? Did you have the pressure that the company was not heading in the right direction? If so, what did you do to correct the situations?
Mike, that's a very good question, and I got phenomenal advice 3 months before I became CEO. It was from a famous corporate attorney named Marty Lipton. And I said, what's the secret of success? You've probably advised half of the Fortune 500 CEOs. What's the difference between those who succeeded and those who failed? And he said, secure your relationships with your board of directors. They are the people that hire you, and they're the only people that can fire you. Do not face any life and death problem alone. So right off the bat, I had an existential, a life and death threat to the business. The post office at that time, which had been a good partner for Pitney Bowes for 75 years, suddenly decided it was going to put us out of business. They had a hardball playing postmaster general who thought that he should make all the money and we should be there making very little money. I spent 18 months, several board meetings, a lot of one-on-one sessions, so that by the time we ended up having to bring a lawsuit to defend ourselves, to protect ourselves, I had everybody on the board behind me. So the most important lesson I learned before I started is, if you have a life and death problem, bring a lot of people into this decision. Don't face it alone. That's why I think I succeeded. And on every important issue for the remainder of my time, I always brought my board along. And I brought the management along. I got as many opinions as I could get.
How many people were on the board?
At any given time, probably there were 11 others, 12 others.
Okay, so do you remember the movie 12 Angry Men?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yes, you got the board behind you, but that was probably a job in itself.
Yes.
How did you get the board behind you? You have 12 different people means 12 different opinions.
Well, the main argument I used is we either die a slow death by giving in on this issue where they were trying to basically cancel a contract and impose regulations and take away our revenue stream, or we were going to put a line in the sand. And I came up with several leverage points that we could use. And my biggest argument to them is a true story. My mother, this goes back to when I was 10 years old. I learned a life lesson when I was 10 years old that ended up applying to this situation. I was at the motor vehicle, my mother was at the Motor Vehicle Bureau during a lunch break during the summer. So I happened to be with her. There was a long wait. The woman at the counter was on a personal phone call. My mother was about ninth in line. She went up to the counter and she politely asked the woman to get off the phone. She didn't. She then went over to the manager, who was having his lunch in his office, said, if you don't get her off the phone in 30 seconds, I'm going to call the talk radio opinion program tonight at 7:30. I'm going to mention the two of you by name, and I'm going to call my congressman, my state senator. I'm going to write a note to the governor's office. And I've never seen public servants change so fast.
Really?
Yes, and
So-
what you realize is that the postal people are scared to death of adverse publicity. They can't be fired for, and by this true of government generally. And one ex-government official told me this, said, you can't be fired for being incompetent, being dishonest, being a bad manager, but God forbid if there's a cover story in the Washington Post or you get a congressional inquiry. So I remembered that advice and I said, we have leverage here. We don't have, they're not going to bully us. So we turned the tables and
A little bit
fortunately.
of a risk, though.
Pardon?
It was a little bit of a risk for you to do that.
Oh, well, yeah, but we didn't have any choice. And in fact, that Postmaster General got done in because he tried to stick it to the unions.
Oh,
And they went to the Washington Post and to the Congress and to the Government Accountability
Right.
Office. He was gone in a month.
wow. That's pretty incredible.
And we settled with his successor, who said, none of us thought this was a good idea to do what he wanted to do to you. And I built a very strong, positive relationship with him after that.
That's pretty cool. I mean, because I've seen a lot of CEOs, they just try to, well, how do I navigate the system till I get out of here? But to utilize your backbone, that's pretty impressive, especially when you are responsible to so many people. But I guess you waited, here's what I'm going to guess. You waited out and you went, well, what are the risks versus the benefits? And you went, it's much better if I go this route because this route's not looking too good. And you probably did it a percentage in your head because
Yeah.
I know you're a little bit of a math guy. So you probably played some odds.
Yeah, there was one other situation a few years later when we had two new entrants into the postage meter business, Stamps.com, which is still around today. They did a very successful
They
offering.
did a good job.
And they, the guy they brought in as CEO after the hype ended turned out to be a great guy. I got to know him during my remaining time at Pitney Bowes. But their stock went public at 11, got to 98. Ours was at an all-time high at 71. We dropped to 24. And all sorts of people were saying, you don't get it. The internet's going to drive Pitney Bowes out of business. And I said, has anybody here used the Stamps.com product? And the answer was no. So I brought in somebody to the boardroom. And I had somebody use a stopwatch. At that point, to download a stamp took 1 minute and 47 seconds. And they said, how could this be? And I said, how many people today actually pay attention to the products that they supposedly are investing in? Bottom line, our stock recovered, their stock took a nosedive, and Pitney Bowes had ample opportunity to figure out how to play in the internet world.
But didn't they end up eating market share?
Well, they gained a little bit at a time
But-
because they were faster than Pitney Bowes years later at figuring out that the growth opportunity was in the package delivery
Gotcha.
market, not the
Right.
letter market.
Mike, I've had a couple people here who are saying, bring them on camera. Are they saying, bring them on camera because they don't see us, or bring them on camera because they're only seeing Mike and they want to see me as well? Or, but we've gotten a few people saying that. I've seen this on Facebook.
Are you asking me, or
Are you seeing it? I'm seeing it fine.
I'm seeing it fine as well?
Okay, so maybe that just has to do with like what cameras they want to see.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry for interrupting you. It's just that I don't
That's
want
sort of
anybody to
important.
like not see.
Yeah.
This is part of the authenticity of live streaming,
Right.
which actually people kind of like.
Yeah.
They like that. Okay,
It's
what's
like
going
the
to
early
happen
days
next?
of television.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the golden days of television.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, like I'm Milton Berle.
yeah. You're probably more like Jack Parr. or
Yeah, okay,
Dave
I'll take
Garroway.
that. Yeah, but Jack Parr didn't go the distance,
Yeah,
and unfortunately for him,
yeah,
because
yeah,
look what happened, what Johnny did.
yeah.
So, Mike, so we talked a little bit about Pitney Bowes. You've been on before, and we've gone through your history. And although I would like to go through it again, I think I want to focus more on what you're doing now. And you're getting into an area which I think is A, fascinating, B, amazing, C, scary, and D, I don't understand too much about it.
Okay.
Can you tell us what's going on in AI and what you are doing.
Yeah, the name of my company is called MoveFlux Corporation, and it has a different name from where we are today. And what we are doing is we're using, I would say, a combination of human and artificial intelligence, because that's to help businesses acquire new customers. And what's amazing to me is businesses spend a lot of money on customer relationship management. There are programs like Salesforce or Microsoft Business Intelligence. So they do a great job. Once they have a customer, they may use a tool like LinkedIn Sales Navigator to identify prospects, but those are not particularly good programs. What you really want is a list of prospects that match your value proposition, and you want either a combination of human and computer tools to tell you who to go after in which order. And as an example, if I am we have a client that's a medical services company, and their initial idea was, we're going to buy a bunch of mailing lists, and we're going to go after companies of a certain size range that we think have high medical costs. And I used a little bit of human intelligence to say to them, if I were you, I would look at professional services firms, because they value the time of the workers higher. That dwarfs the cost of healthcare in their business. They might save them $100 a month in healthcare costs, but if they can capture one billable hour for a New York firm, that's $1,000.
Right.
So what you really want, which you can capture for free on Wikipedia by doing web scraping, is which are the New York-based law firms that have the highest profits per partner. And those are the ones you want to go after.
Gotcha.
And then you use the artificial intelligence to test out whether my hypothesis or theory was the right one. And you might find, oh, this one over here doesn't, there's another variable we should have looked at. Or our hypothesis or our theory about law firms is not as good. We should go after, public relations firms
Right.
or ad agencies.
Right.
So you start with human input, and then you rapidly test and restack and adapt. And there's a lot of back-end computer skills and software to doing that. It's cheaper than it's ever been because of tools like Google Cloud or Amazon
Right.
Web Services.
Yeah.
That's the other misbelief. The belief is that in the old days, we need hundreds of people and we need years of cost, and it's going to cost, $10 million. You could probably do the same thing today with 2 or 3 people using well-developed tools like Google Cloud at about 1/10 to 1/20 of the cost.
And that's what's happening in technology all
Yes.
over the place, which is why so many industries are getting disrupted.
Right.
And why so many people in our generation, my generation, your generation, are becoming displaced, but they can't figure out how to adapt.
The biggest change in our lifetime relative to sales or new business development, when you were selling, when I started at Pitney Bowes, we sent our salespeople out to cold call.
That's what I did.
Right. You go in a building. You're in New York City. You just go up the elevator and you say, there are 10 businesses on the 16th floor. Today, particularly since 9/11, you can't get in anywhere. You've got to have an appointment. So the question is, how do you get that appointment so that somebody will let you in? And by the way, there are most buildings in New York where you can't even press a button to get on a different floor.
Today, not when I sold.
Right.
When I sold.
Today,
Right.
you not only have to go to that building where you have an appointment, you can't go anywhere else once you're there.
No.
You can't get
No.
into another office.
Well,
ID, everything.
I also find that back in the day too, there was.
Can I interrupt you just for 1 second?
Yeah.
Yes.
There are a lot of people saying hi, and I don't want them to leave. Paul, hi. Paul, ask some questions. Beth Hockhauser, I'm so glad you're here. Please ask questions. I'm thinking that's Evan Hollander. Evan, I'm so glad you're here. And Seth Blitzer, I'm hoping that we are on camera. Mike Innamorato, also known as Mike the Recruiter. Go.
Well, I was going to state the fact that things have changed where when I started in the recruitment business, there was, get on the phone, make those calls. These days, no one answers. You can't even get through to people
can't
with a
answer
telephone.
the
No one has a
call.
telephone
You're-
on their desk.
Yeah, the
Even if
email
they-
is spammed.
Right.
No, you have to have logic. And by the way, where LinkedIn could be valuable, what I would do today if I were a up and down the street salesman, if there's somebody I know on my contact list, I would say, this is the value proposition I have. This is the geography in which I'm selling. Whom do you know that you feel comfortable introducing me to somebody in that geography? Would you be willing to make a call, do an email, come to a meeting with me? That is a whole lot better than this, I'm going to make 100 phone calls. The 100 phone calls, I might get 2 people.
Those days are over.
Those days are over. And yet there are so many companies that are doing that today. Or worse yet, they're saying, I'm going to get a LinkedIn connection. Well, I've got 4,000 LinkedIn connections, and when somebody tries to solicit me, I shut them off. I don't want people. I want to have a meaningful business dialogue. I don't want a clumsy sales effort on LinkedIn.
Today, the best way to solicit people is by getting them to solicit you.
Yeah, just like,
this.
yes, yes. The best kind of selling is what we've talked about, I think, in prior conversation. You don't want to look like you're selling. You want to build a relationship first,
Absolutely.
and then you sell later. With Pitney Bowes, I had to sell people on postal. Our first breakthrough, because Pitney Bowes was trying to break through in the direct mail market for
Yeah.
large production systems. I had to go to Little Falls, Minnesota in December.
How cold was that?
20 below zero that
Okay.
day. The building we were having lunch in was an abandoned mansion where they hadn't turned on the heat. We all had to wear our overcoats while we were talking to the town officials. I found out that they had this direct mail shop and the Charles Lindbergh Birthplace Memorial. That was the entirety of the commerce of Little Falls, Minnesota. But I got the order because I was there at a time when they weren't getting other visitors. So going to people at off hours, my government affairs guy would meet people in churches, at Starbucks on Sunday morning. He would do favors for people as if he was an old-time ward boss in a big city.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Mike, when I worked at Pitney, I was at a much lower level than you, but we did essentially the same things.
Yeah.
We had this thing called a fact finder. That thing was the biggest piece of bovine scat I ever saw. I took that thing, I threw it out the window because I went to a customer and I was like, I wanted to build a relationship with them because I knew I could not sell them anything unless they trusted me.
Yeah.
And the only way they were going to trust me is if I could get them on my side. And the only way I can get them on my side if they knew that I cared about them. Once they knew that I cared about them, that's when you bring in the fact finder. That's when you've earned the right to say, how much mail do you do a day? How are you doing that mail? How are you weighing your mail? All those kinds of things that I earned the right to now ask. And like, what are your pain points, Mike? Well, you're more likely to tell me your pain points if you trust me.
Right.
And so that's what you do. And in today's day and age, I do it through live streaming, which I think is a great way to build relationships. And you're using AI.
The AI helps you manage your time better and get faster learning from what, we all make quick judgments about, we go into a sales situation or new business development, something doesn't quite go right. But what AI does, what artificial intelligence does, it's a discipline where we enter the data and it basically learns faster than we do.
Here's my concern, Mike. If it learns faster than we do, aren't we going to get to a point where it's going to learn so much that it's not going to need us?
I don't think so. I'll give you an example from one of my learning entrepreneurial ventures, which was having street side cameras for parking management. And somebody came to us and said, we can use artificial intelligence for self-driving cars. And I started to think a lot about the human factor versus the machine factor in self-driving cars. And there are so many little complexities that computers cannot figure out yet. Computers might get you, software, artificial intelligence software, might get you to the intelligence level of an 8-year-old. But as a fully mature adult, you're going to pick up on things that aren't yet in the artificial intelligence model. So for example, if I'm in a shopping mall and we're all parked perpendicular parking, and I have a self-driving car, and the car next to me has a human driver. True story. And I look at it. Is she running toward the car with a look on her face like, I have to get somewhere? Or is she carrying food and looking at her cell phone, which suggests to me that when she gets into the car, into the driver's seat, she's not going to pull out immediately.
Right.
That computer, that artificial intelligence system, is not sufficiently refined today, and it'll be a long time before it picks up on all those subtle cues that we sort of have embedded.
But how long? I don't think it's as far as you think it is.
For the environment that we're dealing with, for example, with artificial intelligence and self-driving cars in a city, probably 20 years away to be fully integrated in a city. On a highway, it's going to be a lot faster.
Did you ever see the movie AI?
Yes, of course.
Okay, what do you think?
It misses a lot of what we call the edge cases. In that movie, you never see the example of where the self-driving car hit the dog that ran in front of the UPS truck that was parked in front of the car after the car went around it, and the car didn't have time to react. And all of a sudden, government officials stop the progress of
Gotcha.
AI, and it takes 5 more years for them to, they say, you got to solve that problem. That's the thing, the human factor, the regulatory factor, the insurance factor, the one incident that everybody's worried about, that government gets very cautious about,
Right.
that's going to slow it up. The technology will get there faster than the human factor gets there.
I'm going to let you off the hook this time. But I'm going to be watching you on this one because,
Yeah.
I'd say it's going to be a long time, but I still think it could happen. I'm going to get off the subject for 1 second. I think there's another question, but it goes back to Pitney Bowes.
Yes.
Is it
Mike-
okay if we switch topics? And then
Yeah,
go
Mike
back to AI?
Mike Doty had another question. What do you see the biggest challenges for Pitney in the next 10 years? If so, do you think they will succeed?
Well, obviously, we believed that Pitney Bowes had to have a future, even if letter mail, which went through its machines, it was the core business and the cash cow for, by the time I retired, 88 years, fell off a cliff. It did. It fell off a cliff for the reason, didn't have to do with the internet or email or digital communications. It was because there was 1/3 of the mail depended on, it was driven by a consumer credit bubble that basically stopped immediately in 2008 and got sort of locked into place by the Dodd-Frank legislation. So the question is, what's going to enable Pitney Bowes to succeed? One is obviously the continued expansion of global e-commerce. Pitney Bowes has to figure out how it is going to play as an intermediary to match people who want to ship single items with those people who want to receive single items. And we're moving to a different world today. In the world that we've functioned in for close to 100 years in the Pitney Bowes business, we had to have the rate structures of the Postal Service, UPS, more recently FedEx and DHL, and we had to give the customer an ability to select from among those carriers and products. Today, we're dealing with the world of on-demand single-piece shipping. I bought a piece of clothing at the local retail store, and I want it delivered to my home in 2 hours. And I've got to find from among 100 people who've got spare capacity when they're going to be driving to my neighborhood. Pitney Bowes has to figure out how to play in the on-demand
I agree.
package delivery
They-
economy.
Yeah,
The second is
because Amazon's going to eat their cookies if they don't.
well, well, Amazon may very well make the mistake of having its own vehicles. I think if Uber or Lyft or somebody else who's using spare capacity in your private car or my private car. Like, let's say that somebody in East Northport wants to get a package to Darien, Connecticut. In the future world, they should be able to ping me, knowing that I'm on this show and that I live in Darien, Connecticut, and ask me if I'd be willing to take this package somewhere and have it dropped off tonight. And I would get a fee. The person, the intermediary who brought us together would get a fee.
Right.
That's the future.
Right.
The future is all this spare delivery capacity.
Which brings us to the gig economy.
Yeah. Or there are people that are, I'm not in the business of being, I'm not a package carrier.
Right.
But for this one time,
Right.
if somebody wants me to take a book to somebody, and
I'll
they're
make
willing
50
to,
bucks.
and they're going to give me a couple dollars
Yeah.
for the gasoline that I
Right.
have to expend to make a detour, I
Absolutely.
might do it.
Right, especially, hey, I'm going to the city tonight. This will cut my cost.
Yeah.
And I'll have a couple of extra dollars in my pocket as well.
Yeah, or the other area Pitney Bowes has really zeroed in on, which happened from a couple acquisitions we did before I retired, was location intelligence. Long Island, let's say South Shore of Long Island. I had a place in the Hamptons, West Hampton Beach, 1990. Nor'easter and a hurricane hit 1 week apart. West of us, from 650 Dune Road west, all the houses are destroyed. Where we live, untouched. What was the difference? We had jetties to basically protect
Right.
the beach and the homes on the beach. 650 west, there were no jetties. The houses were destroyed.
Right.
The underwriters redlined or basically said the whole island, we're not going to do coverage. We had to get coverage from New York Properties, which was a safety net carrier, which is what, by the way, they should do for healthcare. They should have that
Right.
equivalent for high risk. Pitney Bowes would say the map shows that the high risk areas from 650 up to 1200 West Dune Road, if your address is 585 Dune Road, which ours was, we're going to give you the normal rate. At 955 Dune Road, you're going to pay a much higher premium.
Right.
So very precise underwriting.
Yeah.
So there are all sorts of use cases for matching our postal address
Right.
database to applications where precise addressing is critical.
So let's shift the topic now and go back to AI, but
Yeah.
let's now talk specifically about what you're getting involved with in AI
Yeah.
and why would I want it?
Well, let's just use, we've got a health services company where we're representing or doing work with a specialty practice. And they want to figure out who are the primary care physicians or other feeders into their system that do a routinely excellent job. They refer the big profitable cases, like the orthopedic surgery cases. They prepare the files very well. They do the post-surgical care and instructions better. So I want to isolate those people from everybody else. So I want to do analytics using the electronic health record or whatever data I can come up with. I don't want to rely just on anecdotal data from the specialists in my practice. I've got this robust health record system plus various other systems. So I want to do a very fast software-based program. I know what I'm looking for. I give the rules to the software. Somebody codes the software. And then I say, out of the 1,000 primary care doctors that feed patients into my system, these 50 are superstars. I want 100% of their business. And this system, our system, helps do that.
Gotcha. So you talk a lot about the medical vertical market.
Yeah.
Don't you think it applies to many vertical
Oh,
markets?
absolutely. Yeah, we have an engagement with a firm over in Europe, an American who's trying to build a business in Spain. We have a private equity client that is employing us for helping its advisors help its portfolio companies. Let's say that hypothetically somebody in the advisory group comes from the travel and hospitality industry, and a vertical market for one of the portfolio companies is, let's say, 20 travel and hospitality companies. We want to match those two people, and we want to get a warm introduction from the advisor to that to the people that he or she knows to the portfolio for the portfolio company.
How do you see what you're doing evolving? How do you see the AI evolving?
Well, we're going to get better and better at understanding who in the, let's say, in the warm introduction example, who really wants to help, what's the best way to help, who are the people that are most likely to follow through, what's the best way for them to follow through. What I find, for example, with some salespeople that I've given warm introductions to just on in the pre-artificial intelligence world, they do a terrible job following through. And I'm embarrassed because I have connected two people, and so I sort of learn the rhythm of a selling activity. And probably the number one factor, and let's just use the primary care specialist relationship because I think it applies, trust is extremely important. If I am a specialist and I'm trying to build a better relationship with one of the superstar primary care physicians, that individual may have a problem with certain specialties because of an experience completely unrelated to me. It may be somebody used a comment the other day, he or she has had a PTSD experience with a specialist, and they hoard the patient for as long as possible. So how do we pull out those hidden motivations so we can get a better profile? And I think it's the human, how do we systematize and bring out in the open and get transparency on the human factors? That's where I think it's going to evolve to. Because it's not just a technology play.
Gotcha. Right. It's the merging
Yes.
of both, which is why you're saying that, look, AI is not going to just take over. You need the human factor involved.
Yeah, I mean,
AI
I've
is
got a
gonna help.
Rolodex. I've got a very good Rolodex. Which of the people
Who
that
match.
I know, there may be, Joe here who has a very close relationship with you, but he's not the kind of person that's going to help.
Right.
But Jane, even if she doesn't know you, she's going to find a way to get to you. And that's not obvious when you first look at my contacts. I have human insight into those two individuals.
But here's something the AI is leaving out. Joe in the company may not be able to help you, but he may know somebody in the company who can help you. How does it take that into consideration?
That's something that the system has to learn.
Gotcha.
And one of the things the system also learns is that the decision process in most business-to-business organizations is not a linear one. There's what's on the organization chart, and then there's the way it really is.
Right.
And what's most critical is the way you enter data into a customer relationship management system.
Right.
So those insights about the hidden rules of engagement with that customer get put into the system
Understood.
for future use.
Yeah.
We have a few
Yeah,
more,
I was going to
Things in
say,
the group.
I can tell
Okay.
you're looking at me, and you sound like you got some questions.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
there's a
for
couple
Let
it.
her rip,
questions here.
Mike.
Yeah.
Lori's asking, did you have a mentor growing up, and how did that person help shape who you are today?
I got a lot of good advice from a lot of people, and probably I can think of two instances where my dad, who was a high school dropout, ended up giving me advice that was critical to my life success. I thought I deserved the valedictorian award in high school, and they manipulated the rules to give it to a guy who was probably in a lot of ways more deserving, although under the rules they had in place, he shouldn't have been valedictorian. And I was very angry. I said, I've been cheated. And my dad said, it's your fault. You were half a point ahead. They could manipulate the rules to give the award to him. This doesn't matter. On anything that matters in the rest of your life, do not leave it to chance. You left it to chance. You didn't show that you wanted this badly enough. And that was brilliant advice. Much, much later, I was, at that point, the general counsel of Pitney Bowes, and all of my peers were getting very plum promotional assignments in 1990. CEO called me in, I want you to take on HR. And every senior executive mentor that I knew at the time said, don't take HR. HR is a low prestige kind of job. And one of them sent one of the Clint Eastwood movies where he made some insulting remark to the commissioner who had come out of HR. I'm not going to repeat his remark on a broadcast. And I asked my dad. He said, I would take the job. And I said, why? And he said, well, two reasons. One, CEO probably can't find anybody else. He's going to be extremely grateful to you for taking on a job that nobody wants. It's a thankless job. And then he said, is this a high-paying job? And I said, yes. And he said, well, I know nothing about the top levels of corporate America, but I always hear that it's very cutthroat. How many high-paying jobs do you know that nobody else is going to try to take them away from you? So
Yes.
I took the job, and it turned out to be a vital stepping stone to my future career.
Yeah, which you didn't know. It was just like you put yourself in that path, and it
Yes.
found you.
Yeah.
Which is that's entrepreneurialism.
Yes, he was the best mentor I ever had. Temperamentally, I watched him and his way of demeanor, of interacting with people. And there were times when he didn't even know he was a mentor, but he was a great mentor.
That's fantastic.
Support
And
is
another
important.
question from Robert. How did you first become involved with AI?
It was actually in the smart cities parking technology management business because the chief technology officer was using artificial intelligence tools to take the images from the processors and very rapidly determine whether somebody was parked legally or illegally. So I had to educate myself on best-in-class interpretation and fast processing of, is somebody parked illegally either because they're in an illegal space, they've overstayed their time, they have the kind of car that isn't allowed in that space. All of that requires fast processing because, and this is the critical point, nobody was comfortable with just mailing out a ticket. They wanted to dispatch a parking enforcement officer to the spot. So you wanted to get the message to the parking enforcement officer as quickly as possible, and you wanted to prioritize, somebody parking in a handicap space or a construction vehicle blocking a small street. And you need artificial intelligence tools to do those things as well as they can be done.
Interesting.
Now, is this, Mike, for me, has this become an obsession for you? You mentioned that earlier in the program, to follow your obsession, or that's what you've done. Is this an
I
obsession?
always look for simpler, more technology-savvy ways to do things that where the seat of the pants human judgment is being used. And I instinctively, for example, do Google searches on any question. And by the way, I don't always assume that I know the answer to that question. As an example, I'm on a public company board, and people have said, Eaton Corporation, great world-class company, and I asked somebody once, what about wireless electricity? And they said, well, that's predominantly in use with small devices like smartphones. And I said, well, we're in the electric vehicle components business. Is anybody charging electric vehicles wirelessly? So I typed in charging electric vehicles wirelessly, and lo and behold, Qualcomm is doing a pilot with
Wireless
wires
charging.
under the pavement
Yeah.
just outside of Paris. And it's actually not a new idea.
No, it's been
I
around
went
for
to
a
the
while.
Tesla Museum in Belgrade
Yeah.
earlier this year, and Tesla came up with this idea well over a century ago.
He lived on Long Island, you know. They
Tesla, that's right,
They just
yes.
sold his house a few years
You
ago.
know, I went to his museum in Belgrade.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Right.
Mike, you know what? I actually have a question. We don't have a lot of time left. I mean, we can go longer. I don't care. But, Mike, I have a question for you. You're a recruiter. You live on sales. How do you see it, what Mike Critelli is doing, fitting into what you do?
Well, I think
Or
it might
do
be
you?
able to. Well, yeah, definitely there's components to it. Speeding up the information that's out there, and to make that valuable where you could do something with it. I think with our business, recruitment, or it's a human business. So the connections, the networks that you make, that's ultimately going to open the doors that you need to drive, sales and revenue.
Because your partner has told me this stuff, all this database stuff, it's all BS. To me, I'm successful because I bring this unique difference of me. I bring me to the table, right? Isn't that what he says?
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mike Critelli, I'm not asking you to dispel what his partner's saying, but there's bigger picture than that, isn't there?
Yeah, what I would do with a recruiting business, because I was talking to Mike before we came on the air. There's a book called The Rare Find, where somebody said, the author, his name was George Anders, said, look at the bottom of the resume. What's somebody's passion? And what did they learn earlier on in their life? And how did they learn it? And that's, you get a you get a window into people by looking at offbeat things that happened early in their life. I'll use an example. This was not a mentor, this is a life experience. Junior year of high school, I went to a Catholic high school. The chaplain said, a colleague of mine in the seminary is in an impoverished town in Kentucky. The church burned to the ground last year. I want you to go down to this town with me, meet the pastor, meet the leading citizens. We want to raise enough money and send a volunteer team next summer of 1966, to this town, use the students as volunteers and rebuild the church. And I'd like you, if you're so inclined, to be the project leader. So there were two things that we had to do. We came up with the idea of doing an entertainment night where we were basically doing amusements, and we charged admission. And that was going to be we needed $6,000, and that was going to be $4,000 of the $6,000. And the other $2,000, we got a donation of a Honda 90 motorcycle, and I had to sell 10-cent raffle tickets. And the question was, how much could we sell in raffle tickets? We sold $2,000 of 10-cent raffle tickets.
That's
Think
a
about
lot.
that.
Wow.
In about a month, I sold $20,000
$20,000.
of raffle tickets. And I realized that lesson came in handy decades later. I took over Pitney Bowes Financial Services, and I said, we have 1.5 million leasing customers. We have all sorts of value-added services where if we added $1 a month to the lease, we could make a lot of money. People, if you do something, as long as you're not nickel and diming people,
Yeah.
Right.
but if you're doing something that adds value, and you say, we're going to add $5 a month to your lease, and by the way, you won't have to, we actually came up with this product. It's called Value Max. You will be able to avoid having to submit insurance documentation. If your equipment becomes lost, stolen, damaged, or destroyed for any reason, we will replace your equipment in 24 hours. We collect, during my time, I think we were making $25 million a year on this product alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because for a small amount of money, people had the assurance that they were never going to be down for more than a day. In fact, what made me know that we had a great product, all sorts of plaintiffs' attorneys tried to sue us on the basis that we had an illegal insurance product, which we did. We defeated every one of them. But they didn't like the idea that we were making a lot of money doing something completely legal.
Right.
That's pretty cool. I like
What's
that.
did we? What's the name of the AI company that you have? Did you mention?
The one I have is
Yeah.
called MoveFlux Corporation, MoveFlux.
How do we find it?
How do you fund it?
Find.
Just go online, moveflux.com.
So it's blocks.com.
Yeah, MoveFlux.com.
Okay, great.
It's not going to tell you what we do because the use cases are all different. We were talking at the time about how do you match people.
Right.
Well, the matching is somebody on my Rolodex with Cliff as a prospect. So
Right.
how do we match those two people? How do we find the way to
Right.
get them together?
We're almost out of time. We do have another question, and
Question?
right?
Another question from Robert. How do you think your legal background has impacted your career as a whole? Do you think it gave you a particular mindset or foundation in business?
I was a trial lawyer, and this is very important. I had a growth mindset, and the trial lawyer in me gave me two qualities that were positive and one that I had to adapt to, actually change. Quality one, on any given day when I walked in the door in my law firms or at Pitney Bowes, my schedule could get blown up. So I had to be very resilient and resourceful because the day never ended predictably. Almost never did the day go on a calendar. So when I got to be CEO, it never bothered me that something happened that it was unpredictable. The second is I did a lot of business litigation, and I had to retain experts, and I had to know as much, if not more, than the experts. So I did not have this fear of the cult of the expert. If an expert, let's say I was at Pitney Bowes, the engineers, the IT people, the finance people, even the HR professionals, I was unafraid of them. And if what they were saying did not make sense to me, I wasn't going to defer to them. So that was the good qualities. So I could pick up very quickly on complex subject matters. On the negative, I would go into the office of somebody in lease processing when I took over financial services, and I'd say, I'm doing management by walking around. What do you think about this? And they had deadlines to meet, and I had to learn to back off the people that had regularly scheduled responsibilities because they didn't have the same multitasking ability that I did. So I actually had to learn not to do that.
Right. And different people have different investments into a company.
Yeah.
You had a much greater investment.
But even so, there were people that could multitask very well, and I loved having them around.
Right.
And there were people that were very good at what they did. They had deep domain expertise, and they were terrible at multitasking, and I just had to leave them alone.
Right. Let them do their thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's a sign of a good manager.
Well, I had to have a few mishaps before I got there.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you being on again. Are there any questions?
I think
Before we go.
I think we are good.
I think we're good.
Great.
Good.
Mike,
Yeah.
Very
as
much
you-
enjoyed it.
Yeah, as usual, you're a great guest. Will you come back again?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it. Next time I'm sure you'll be doing something else. He might
Hope
be,
not.
I don't know what he's going to be doing next. You never know with him.
Build spaceships.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to come in wearing like a space outfit on.
Right.
He's going to go up, We're going to launch from here.
Right.
Anyway, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm not sure if she's our next guest or not, but we actually have the president of Aston Martin America coming on the show. This is our last show until September, and I know that that's gonna be a really cool show. So I'm hoping that's the first show in September after Labor Day. So for the month of August, everybody have a great time. My camera right there. And Frank J. Parisi, you're going to be at the beach, I guess, for the next month,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mike?
I might go to my mansion in Italy.
Yeah, maybe on Lake Como.
Right.
Yeah, Mike Innamorato, thank you very much for helping us out today. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you all. This was most
Yeah,
fun,
Mike.
and you have something exceptional here.
Thank you. I
In
appreciate
terms of being able to reach people efficiently and in a very personal manner.
I don't know exactly where we're going yet, but
Yeah.
we are definitely going somewhere.
Good. Well, good luck.
We have some ideas. We're starting to bring in clients, but we're just having it's fun.
Yeah.
We love doing it. Everyone here loves doing it. So thanks again. Credits, we don't have credits tonight, but I will put them on the on-demand. And so when you go to streamcastnetwork.com, go to the on-demand, that would be episode 48 with Mike Critelli. We will have credits on there. Everybody have a great August. We will see you September the 8th.
All right.